Welcome to Global Network of Healers. My name is Lana Gaich, and I wanted to do something special for you today. So I've invited Elena Zivkovic to join me. She's a second year university student, and her schooling has been impacted this year, as I'm sure many other students across the world. She's now having to do her classes online, and being stuck at home now has its challenges. Elena has done a great job of creating a routine for herself. She's done some things that she's going to share with you on what was helpful so that she can carry on, stick to the schedule, and have some sort of routine as they're going through this transitional period. Welcome, Elena.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you for joining us. So, can you tell me, Elena, what is the hardest thing about being at home?
For me, I think that the hardest thing would definitely be the lack of routine. I mean, we always had a schedule at university. You had specific classes, you had to be there on time, and now you're at home and you have to create your own schedule. And I think that's very difficult for many people.
Absolutely. I mean, that makes so much sense. The creation of the routine is the one, then sticking to the routine is another. And so you're kind of talking about there's a maybe a little bit of both, that there's difficulty in trying to create the routine of when am I going to do this and that and this and that, and then making sure
Yeah.
you can finish. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when it comes to then a typical day for you, now that you're doing online classes, can you tell us what your typical day is like?
My typical day would be waking up when I feel well rested. I think sleep is very important, so it's very important to feel well rested and to continue on with your day. A nutritional breakfast, of course, give you energy for the day. That's of course needed as always. And then I always like to study in a designated spot. Of course, I have my office that I'm currently in right now, but if you don't, I think it's important to find a place where you're focused, where lots of distractions aren't around you. And of course, I like a window so I can open my blinds so the sun can always come in and shine. It helps me lighten my mood.
That's
So
fantastic.
yeah, it is. I start with studying, and for me personally, I like to divide up my work. So I do a little bit every day so that I'm not overwhelming myself, because I feel like as we start to stay at home, we might be overwhelmed, and it's very important to not do that, to keep our health intact.
Yeah. And I mean, from a psychological perspective, and I've worked with clients who have had anxiety issues, especially around taking tests and school. It is, you're right, you cannot learn well when you're anxious. And so it is important to have a nice little oasis and, of course, natural beauty of opening the window and having to see some trees and the sunlight. It creates this nice atmosphere. And you want to stay in your office then.
Exactly, absolutely. And it gives you more motivation to actually do the work that you were, for example, that you were supposed to be at that class. Now you can sit at home and do the work on your own time.
Yes, absolutely. Now you are a student in psychology,
Yes.
and so you're in second year now.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me is you've taken the principles, what you've learned in psychology, and actually applied it to your routine. So just
Yeah.
maybe speak a little bit more about the principles and why they work?
Yeah, of course. I think that as a university student, we're under many stressors, and I think we often forget to take a break. And I think it's very important to preserve our mental health and to, I mean, in these rough times, as tough as it is with this coronavirus and all that havoc that's outside, I think it's very important to just slow down and allow ourselves to think about what's happening, and of course apply that to our studies, and just understand that it's okay to be stressed and anxious during these times when we are during exams and midterms, of course. And it's important to find things such as meditation that can help you calm down in those anxious times.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head when you said, it's important to acknowledge that something's happening and it's stressful, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we can't ignore the issue at hand. So acknowledgement is important, but then regulation is also important. Emotional regulation, physical regulation. And I love that you said meditation. It can be hard to meditate. Have you found some tricks that kind of help you meditate? Like in terms of focusing on your breath as you do it, or a focal point in the room? How do you meditate?
Usually after I study, I take a couple breaks. Every 15 minutes, I can take a break, and I just sometimes focus on my breath and
Yeah.
focus on where I am and just take a little break. That's always okay. And just notice yourself, notice what your body's telling you. If you're tired, it's absolutely okay to take a nap. If you don't feel like studying anymore, and it's absolutely okay to take a break. And I think that's very important. People often forget that they're allowed to take a break.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other thing too that you also said that people do forget to do is to check in with their bodies. You know,
Yes.
how do I feel? Do I need a drink of water? Do I need to stretch?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Do I need to change positions? Maybe I need to sit in a different way, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's some really great advice so far.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice in terms of how to help yourself? What would you say to other students? How to get through this difficult time at home? Their parents are with them all the time now, siblings, younger or older, right? Depending on kind of what the issue is. What are some, maybe what's some advice that you might have?
I think the advice for a student is to take things day by day. I think it's important to set a reachable goal every single day in terms of studies. For example, today I'll do a chapter of this, and that's okay. And I think that's very important. As for other people around you, I think it's also very important to have your own quiet time and to tell other people of your boundaries. For example, now I'm going to study. I wouldn't like to be interrupted if that's possible. So I know it can get very hectic because usually families aren't together at certain times, and now with this social distancing, everyone is together constantly in their household is what I mean. So
Yeah.
I think it's hard to find those barriers, so I think it's very important to enlist those barriers.
Yes, yeah. And I suppose if you're physically confined and you have a smaller house,
Yeah.
earphones, earmuffs, something to kind of tune it
Music.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Often students do tell me that music is a very good de-stressor. Is that something that you use?
I actually personally like to listen to classical music. I think lyrics sometimes distract me, so I think classical music is awesome, and it's proven actually that it may help with studying and stuff like that.
Fantastic. Well, that's wonderful. So it sounds like, I mean, if I had to summarize now, there are tons of tips and tricks that you've already shared with us. And I'm going to do my best now to encapsulate it all, but I may forget a few. And so feel free to jump in, Elena, and let me know. So some of the main ones: how do I keep my studies going? I stick to a routine. I want to make sure that I set small, achievable goals. I do a chapter at a time. I take breaks. I make sure that gives me the ability to go at something else the next time, the next hour with a fresh mind. I listen to classical music. I try to communicate with my family when I need alone time, when I need to study. So kind of encapsulating all of that.
Yeah.
And having, of course, like you said, your office. This is a place where I study constantly. And so there's a learning there that, as soon as you walk in, contextually speaking, we have right away your mind's going, this is where I'm learning. And, having the same chair, having the same desk, facing the same direction. Those are all cues that help your body say, this is where learning is happening and has happened before. Here we go again. So it's a little easier to get into it, hey, the routine.
Exactly.
Yeah, fantastic. And then, of course, maintaining a routine as best as you can.
Of course, yeah.
And
I think it's also very to exercise, maintain our sleep, make sure we get enough sleep every single night, eat healthy, and of course, keep our mental health intact because it's very important, especially during these tough times.
Absolutely. And that's the meditation.
Exactly.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. These were very wonderful things that you discussed and that you shared with everyone. So I hope there's value here. We can write up a little blurb here with the post just to kind of help people remind. And I want to encourage the listeners and the viewers to create their own lists. And sometimes when you're stressed, this helps you just take a look at it. It's right there. You've already developed it. And I guess I'm getting into the challenge my viewers, give them something to do with this to make it their own. So thank you so much for being with us and for sharing all of this, Elena.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Wonderful. Take care.
You too.